Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be going over week 4 of Codesmith and what we did and kind of the day by day and things like that. So it started with us having a node assessment, which was basically an assessment on the back end of Node. I don't want to say exactly what we got tested on, but essentially it was the back end of Node. And we started getting into databases. So we learned about databases. We learned about SQL and MongoDB, or as PostgreSQL and MongoDB. And we had a skill builder on it, which was basically just like trying to write SQL queries, which I did have experience with. I did take an SQL class when I was doing my degree, so I definitely did a little bit of that, but I also liked getting a refresher on it. And then we had a challenge on databases, and so I can actually pull this one up here. So if I go to CDLS, and I go to Unit 10 databases, CDO. Okay, and we npm start this one. npm run dev. One of these should start it. There we go. Okay, so it's gonna pull it up here. Hopefully we're in the right branch. Okay, so essentially what we did was we had a database for this, and we had a database in MongoDB, and we had a database in SQL. So pretty much what we did is we had these cards, and these cards are a database, and we had to get all these things, and I can actually pull this up. So if we go to Unit 10, databases, I can show you kind of what the database looked like. So this is what it looked like, and then we were pulling all these things from a database, and I can actually pull up the database. So we had something like this, if you just do select from films, essentially, and whatever you want. So we had SQL databases, and we were querying into these. And what happened was we were querying into these to get characters, to add characters, and to also make these like relations, right? So you could see like if you wanted to know the film someone was in, that's not in there directly. We have to do a bunch of joins. So you have to like go to the films and the people by ID and people and so on. And so we had to work with these, with this elephant thing to write queries, and we could test queries here. And then we would write our queries in our actual backend where we simply just, call the database. The front end was written for us. We called the database and it was made for us. And you can do things like create a character, like if you create a character, he would pop up and you can give him some stuff. And you can give him a planet, some movies he was in. And then if you save and you go back, you would essentially see that. So you could see like here's this Bob character with all these things. Here's the movies he was in. Also, all of these little blue boxes are database queries that we're doing. So we were doing a database in SQL, and then pretty much we also had another branch where we had to rewrite in MongoDB. So we had a main branch, and then we had a MongoDB branch. And we were doing a database in both of them, and we learned how to query. We learned how to do stuff in MongoDB. I've never used MongoDB, but it's a little bit more intuitive. And we also played some database games because we finished a bit early for this one. And so we played some database games to learn some more advanced querying. So that's what we did the first 2 days. We had a code review, we had a approach lecture. And I think it was definitely pretty good to get a little SQL review to learn how to connect the database to the backend, how to query, how to get data in and out of a database. Quite nice. And we were also doing hack hour problems this week that were more, I'd probably say like LeetCode mediums. We did a lot of like flattening of an array type problems. They were kind of repetitive, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but as far as the difficulty, I'd say they were around LeetCode mediums for this week. And so after we were done with the databases, we went into authentication, and we learned about authentication with cookies, with like giving someone cookies, also authenticating for a password, how that would work. And then there were some extensions for the authentication, but we didn't get to too much of them. So if I actually pull that up here, if I pull up the authentication unit, you can take a look here, authentication. So we did this bcrypt, which is essentially like how to hash a password. We learned that. And we did the setup, we created users, we created cookies, we created sessions, we blocked pages, we made sure that users were logged in, but we never used this jot, which is essentially like a token a user gets when they sign in, which is kind of useful. And we also didn't have time to do OAuth, which is like if you sign into a page, it'll ask you to like sign in with Google or something like that. We never really did that, and so I'll definitely look into this more on my own for my projects in the future, because I think that's kind of cool, to have when you want to make a page, it would be nice to have a user sign in with Google or whatever instead of just signing in on your site. But essentially what this looked like is I can actually show this as well. And you can see this is our database. So our database, whenever there's queries for this unit 10, whenever there's queries made, it actually prints them. So all of these are queries that we made. It got a bunch, like when it loaded the characters, it did all this stuff. Okay, so let me go cd here ls and cd unit 11. And let me go to authentication. We did have skill builders again, which actually finished most of them, but I'm not going to show those here. Okay, so hopefully I know which one. It's one of these npms, npm start. They're all different. Okay. So this should be good now. So if I reload this page, yeah. So here it is, essentially for authentication. So essentially what it is you had a login page. And this was a MongoDB database. So if you do like Bob and you click login, it would say, okay, well, this Bob is not in the system, so let's make him sign up instead. So now if we sign up and we create user, then we will create a Bob with a password, and we will also give him some cookies. So you can see like, let me see here, I think it's application. So you can see he should have some cookies. Okay, here they are. So SSID, a secret, some other stuff. But yeah, so this is essentially how this worked. And then if you try to just go, let's say you try to go to the secret page directly, like let's say we just close that session and we try to go to the secret page directly, it would work, but then I think it starts timing out. And then also if we restart the server, like let's say we just try to log in and go to the secret page directly. Okay, so it should not, or once I time out anyway, it should not let you go here. There is one other tab here. I think it was like secret something. Let me pull up the code just to double check. So if I go to code. But yeah, essentially what happened was we gave a user a cookie, and then when a user logged in with this cookie, then it would let you log in. But yeah, so here's the code for it. So there was another route. Okay, secret users was another route that like gave you some info. So if you go over here and we npm start this and we go to localhost 300 secret users, it would print like the actual Bob. And then if you go back here, yeah, so if you try to sign up and then you put in some stuff, it would create a user, it would add that user, and then it would also give them some cookies. And I think these cookies get deleted in like 90 seconds. I think if you actually wait long enough, the session will get deleted, and then it'll say like you can't be in here anymore because you're not a valid user essentially. So I think I might be able to just close this out and do it. But let's see, or you could wait a little bit. So if I do npm start and I get rid of all this. So let's say I try to go here. Okay, can't reach it. We npm start. We go to over here, and then now I just try to do like secret. So if I try to like log in with something that doesn't work, and then I'm on the sign up page, but then I actually want to access secret, I think this shouldn't work, but you might have to wait long enough to make sure it doesn't work. Okay, so it does work, but I think if you wait long enough, let's check the cookies here. These cookies do get deleted eventually, basically for the user. So let's see here. So there are these cookies. So essentially we made these cookies for the user, which have an expiration date. I think in MongoDB they do expire in like 90 seconds or something. Expires max, something. Let's try to actually reload the page. See what happens. Hopefully it expires by now. Okay, and then if I go to secret. Okay, so you can see like now the cookies are expired, or let's take a look. Yeah, so the login secret's expired, so there's a secret in Codesmith, but there is no session ID cookie anymore. And so if you see like this doesn't work now, so secret doesn't work, but if you go back here and you log in, you sign in, then it allowed this SSID. And this is essentially saying, you know, like a normal session, if you log into a site, it'll give you a cookie saying you can access, you know, your account and things like that. And so the way this worked also in the secret page is you had a user, and then this was the bcrypt password. So whatever password it was, essentially what bcrypt does is it takes a password and adds like a randomly generated string right after it, and then does a bunch of hashing. So it just gives you more secure passwords. But that was essentially for that. That's what it was for that unit. You know, you try to log in, and if it was invalid login, it would take you to the sign up page. And then if you try to access a secret, but you're not allowed to, it would take you to the sign up page. If you tried to have a bunch of like errors, it would take you to the sign up page. But yeah, essentially authentication with cookies, and to make sure users aren't able to access things they're not allowed to, so you can make a basic login for your page. Okay, so let's move on. So we did this. Yeah, like I said, we didn't have time to get to the extension, but then that was the authentication unit, and then we had our approach lecture. And like I said, I definitely want to do a little bit more here. And so this week was definitely kind of stressful because we also had a hackathon on Wednesday, which was, we worked on a Chrome extension. You worked with a random partner, but it was like, you could see, they kind of just said like, you have as much time as you want to work on it. And so I think we ended up working till like 11 p.m., which was pretty tiring, and yeah, definitely tiring. But I could show you what happened there. So demonstrate that. So if you go to like apple.com here, actually I showed this to my friend who works at Apple. It's kind of funny. And this is our Chrome extension. It's a browser toolkit. Essentially what it does is you have a bunch of tools and it destroys the screen. So you can see like if you click with a hammer, it'll make a crack. And then we also had a screwdriver that, you know, turned things. It's still a little, you could see it like turn this and like move stuff. It was still a little buggy, but yeah, essentially, you know, it did like turn stuff and move it around. So you could see the things like this. We also had a paintbrush, which made my face and my cat print, and a bunch of other people in my cohort. So then it also had this little drill that got rid of elements. So you can see it got rid of elements like so. And then we also had a wrench, which turned things around as well. So I could like flip things, it could turn things around if it actually clicked on them correctly. Oops. Go back here, turn this on again. Okay, it's still on, looks like. Okay, let's actually probably restart this. Sure. Okay. So if you turn this back on, you go to the Apple page. Turn this back on. So once again, we have the hammer, we have the wrench that moves stuff. A little buggy, but it's okay. We had the paintbrush, had random pictures. We had this that got rid of images and parts of the DOM, so we could actually get rid of parts of the DOM. Like we should be able to get rid of this, should be able to get rid of things like this. We had the wrench that moved things around, so you can see it like moves things around. We had a chainsaw that when you click, it would like look like a chainsaw was cutting like this. We did have a few issues, like if you go really fast, because this was done with the set interval, you know, it looks a little weird, but that's fine. Then we also had, yeah, so then it's back to this hammer, and this was all the things we had in here. And then, yeah, we could say like, you can write stuff out with a chainsaw, so you could do things like this, you know. But yeah, this is essentially what it did. And then what happened was when we demonstrated this, we actually got first place for the like the best, I guess, the best hackathon project, which I definitely think there were a few that were quite a bit more useful that I would actually consider using. But it was definitely, I would honestly say if I had to pick between doing it or not, I would say not. I did get lucky that the person I worked with was really good at front end, so he could do a lot of DOM manipulation that was really good. So he definitely did more of the work for that one. But yeah, then we finally went into this testing session. And in this testing session, what happened was we learned about test-driven development. And essentially what we did was we wrote unit tests, and we also tested parts of our actual app. So I will pull that up really quick here with like the code and things like that and show you a little bit more. So if I do this testing and I pull up the code. So essentially in this unit 12, we were given a front end and a back end, and it was kind of a simple front end and a back end. And a database was pretty much a JSON file. So you could see like, if we go to, I think there's a database here, a server DB. So essentially the database is just a JSON file, but there is a server. It's a pretty simple server, right? So here's a server, and then there's some other stuff in the server. And there is a client side of it where it's a React app, essentially. And so if I can actually pull that up, so just one of these NPM runs. Okay, there we go. So if I localhost 3000, turn off this extension. Okay, so essentially, this was the app that was given to us with the front end and the back end, and we created this in Redux before, and essentially just, adds markets, adds cards, things like that, pretty basic. This is essentially what we did before. However, what we were focused on this time was we were focused on actually writing tests for it. So you can see like in these tests, we had a database set of tests where essentially you're just writing unit tests for your database to make sure everything works. And then we also had tests for the super test, which was to make sure like you can call something from the front end and then it returns something from the back end. So you can call like a GET request, make sure it responds correctly, make sure it gives you the right type of data, make sure it gives you the right signal. We had React test, which could test rendering components because this was a React front end. So we could test rendering components. We made sure that they were rendered correctly and they all worked. Then we had a reducer test, which, because this was in Redux, there was a reducer. So we had a bunch of tests, a bunch of unit tests for the reducer, which we did as well. And then we also had this puppeteer test was the last one. Yeah, so which we never really got to. This is the puppeteer essentially is testing the app from front to back end, but there were so many tests that we just didn't get to this part. Even though we had 2 days, like you could see this React is like 150 lines of code. Super test is not that much. The DB is a decent amount of code. Yeah, the reducer is a decent amount of code. There's just like a lot. So we didn't get to the end, but we got most of it, and we definitely learned how testing works, and that was pretty good. And if you actually run, I think it's like npm test here. So essentially we were given these tests in Jest, which is like, it's not like Mocha, but it's similar. So we learned how like a testing framework works, and you could see like this is all the tests that we ran, and it all passed except for the end-to-end test, which we never really did. So these front-end integration tests is like the thing that we just didn't get to, the puppeteer tests, but everything else passed, so that was fine. Okay, and then yeah, so we had the approach lecture on it. There was quite a bit, but that was pretty much the end of the week. So that's going to sum it up for this week. And yeah, it was definitely a tiring week with the hackathon. I felt like it was just way too much stuff. And I also went to this like Codesmith social thing, which was a trivia game, which was kind of fun. But I just felt like there's just, I think I just realized, if I'm coding 9 to 8, like I have to just call it at 8. I can't be coding more than that. It's just like too draining. But yeah, so as a preview of next week, we are going to have an assessment on the database. And then we're going to have one day of build tools, but then essentially we're just going to be writing a solo project. And then from here on in, it's going to be the project phase, and we're also going to have a grad assessment. So essentially we will have some lectures, but for the most part, we're just going to be doing projects from now on. So the next like 8 weeks is just going to be a solo project, a Scratch project, the OSP, which is a 3-week project with a group of 4 to 5 on some kind of dev tool and things like that. So I'm actually not going to be making week by week videos in the future, but I'll probably just make an update in a few weeks or something to like let you guys know how it's going. Or once I do actually have a few projects that I made, I'll share those. But yeah, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next Codesmith review video, and I do make that in a few weeks probably. So thanks for watching.